Hello, my name is Keith Kreischer. I'm the Executive Director of the IoT M2M Council, or IMC, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this session on worldwide IoT connectivity presented by the IMC. As always, I hope everyone's staying safe and well in these interesting times. As I said, the topic for this track is worldwide connectivity for IoT applications. And I'll be introducing our moderator in just a moment. But first, before we begin, we wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. The webcast is being streamed through your computer, so there is no dial-in number. For the best audio quality, please make sure your computer speakers or headset are turned on and the volume is up so you can hear the presenters. An on-demand version of the webcast will be made available later today and can be accessed using the same audience link sent to you earlier. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can submit them through the Q&A widget. The presenters may answer questions at the end of the session, but please feel free to ask your questions at any time during the presentations. Any unanswered questions will be responded to offline. We'll have a record of your registration and we can tie that to your question, so you will be responded to one way or the other. Please be sure to check out the resources that our presenters have provided through the webcast interface, as well as for their full biographies. We tend to do abbreviated biographies when we introduce folks. I'd like to make my introduction in a moment, but just a quick word about my organization first. We're producing this event. That is the IoT M2M Council. Our group is the largest trade organization dedicated to the IoT sector, 25,000 rank and file members. We have essentially two levels of membership. We have adopter members, who are individual product makers and designers, enterprise users, and apps developers that deploy IoT solutions. We also have sustaining members, which are roughly 35 companies that provide IoT solutions in the form of connectivity, hardware, and software. Our IMC adopters qualify to join the group as IoT buyers. They join to get the best IoT content there is, including our extensive library of hundreds of use cases, white papers, news items, blogs, and research, as well as advance notice of our events like this one. If you qualify as an IoT buyer, I suggest you check out our website where you can apply for membership. IMC sustaining member companies are technology providers that join our group to get exclusive access to 25,000 adopter members for purposes of thought leadership, lead generation, promotion, and research. Our sustainers include some of the very largest companies providing IoT solutions: Kyocera, Vodafone, Quectel, Tata, but also smaller, equally nimble technology providers. As a group, they form our IMC Board of Governors and represent the most influential group of IoT leaders there is. If you have an interest in joining this group, please reach out to me personally via our website. We look at the IMC as an industry accelerator. Our mission is to bring adopters and solutions providers together to deploy IoT technology for the public good. We see today's session on worldwide IoT connectivity as exactly in keeping with that mission. With that, I'd like to introduce the moderator for today, my good friend and colleague, Robin Duke-Willey. Robin's the founder and CEO of Beecham Research, one of the best-known analyst firms in the IoT sector. Robin, good morning or good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yeah, no, I can. Yes, I realized I was on mute.
No worries. No
so
worries.
Thanks very much, Keith. That's great. Well, yes, welcome to this session, designing IoT deployments for worldwide compatibility. I have three panelists that are joining me for that. So Luigi Capobianco, who is SVP for floLIVE. Sam Coley, product strategy at Giuseppe and Devrient, and Ronald Westrate, who is SVP and CTO at Core. We're each of us going to give a very short presentation, and then we're going to move on to a discussion. And we've got a number of discussion points that are going to occupy our time. But if you have a question, do please indicate that in the screen, and I'll see if I can get to that and ask the panelists accordingly. So if you can try and keep it on topic, that would be helpful, and we'll see how that goes. So I've got one slide to show, which is the one that's up there at the moment. And it's about this topic, designing IoT deployments for worldwide compatibility. In general, IoT is becoming increasingly important to commercial operations, um, and the now needs to operate anywhere on the planet. So it's not just confined to small environments or immediate environments. It's becoming very much a worldwide thing. Um, and the graph I've introduced here, excuse me, yeah, excuse me. The graph that I've shown here is to show annual growth rates in different regions of the world. As you can see, the fast developing regions are now growing much faster than in developed regions. Now, these are growth rates based on connected IoT devices. It's not a revenue number. Um, Obviously, those ones that are growing fastest at the moment are starting from further back. They're not as large as the bigger areas that were already quite large, but nevertheless, it shows a catch up. And particularly, I'd draw your attention to India and Southeast Asia at 28.9% per annum growth of devices. So it's a very rapidly expanding area. And that emphasizes the need for seamless operations worldwide. It's no longer just a country based thing or a region based thing, it's very much a worldwide thing. And that introduces all sorts of issues that need to be considered when you have worldwide operations, and the need for compatibility, the need for seamless integration, and so forth. And those are the things that we're going to talk about in this discussion. I would also draw your attention over the next few days to a new report by my company, Beecham Research, which is about IoT Anywhere. So very much related to this topic. Keep an eye out for that because we will be launching that very shortly. So with that in mind, I'd like to move on to our next speaker, who is Luigi Capobianco. So Luigi, if you could just introduce yourself and also your company and your perspective on this environment, that would be great. Thanks very much.
Sure, thanks, Robin. Hello, everyone. As Robin said, I'm Luigi. I'm taking care of floLIVE's operations in Europe and the Middle East. And before talking about floLIVE, I just want to spend a few seconds on why we're here today. So as Robin said, it really became a worldwide kind of application. And this comes with lots of complexity and lots of decisions that, as we're going to discuss today, need to be made at the beginning of the design of an IoT solution, of an IoT device, depending on the vertical, depending on how's the logic of the device. So we just wanted at floLIVE to put here this slide to show a bit the flow and also the complexity, the vastity of the decisions that need to be considered, and to understand that it's really now, it needs to be treated as a project, connectivity, not just as a commodity, especially in the IoT domain. So it starts from understanding the behavior of the device, understanding the behavior of the application, and therefore understanding bandwidth, latency, whether you need to be compliant to certain kind of things. We're going probably to discuss this later, in which geography you're going to launch it, and what's the tolerance that you have. There are applications that are more critical, applications that are less critical, and therefore they can more or less tolerate latency, tolerate coverage gaps, and so on, and also determine, therefore, at the end, what's the technology, the RAT type, the radio access type that you're going to need to use, and therefore select what's the technology, the cellular solution that you're going to use. And what we do at floLIVE is exactly helping companies worldwide, from mobile network operators to mobile virtual network operators and enterprises with very peculiar needs, to find and tune the right solution for their IoT applications. Over time, we developed the largest IoT cellular infrastructure in the world, meaning we have the probably the highest number of POPs, point of presence, distributed all around the world, and we provide service through 15 different IMSIs, so through the roaming agreements of 15 different MNOs, but also through local MNOs, depending on the country and on the need. We therefore help companies to really define the right solution, because we believe that today connectivity is something that needs to be taken care very accurately before deploying a solution that needs to go globally, and it needs to work, because if the solution doesn't work, you as a company are losing revenues. So Robin, I hope I've been concise enough.
Great, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. I'd now like to move on to Sam Coley of Giuseppe and Devrient. So Sam, do please take us on.
Thanks, Robin. Yeah, so I think, also just, wanted to address the topic first. And I think, why it's such a relevant topic really is that, the ecosystem around IoT, be it, connectivity or hardware or software, really needs to evolve in order to enable kind of IoT deployments in a truly seamless manner. And if it's not seamless, then essentially, global mass IoT is probably, an unrealistic goal. But I think, there's plenty of opportunities for the community to come together and make sure that that's possible. I mean, if we look at the kind of need, it's 34 billion connections by 2028. I mean, it's a huge number, more than 4 times the amount of humans on the planet, and probably more than 8 to 10x the number of standard connections there. So, how do we ensure that those kind of deploying globally can do it seamlessly and can access the right technology in order to optimize their deployments to ensure the maximum value or ROI on their IoT deployments? And I think given that 72% of global deployments currently don't support things like eSIM or multi-IMSI to enable connectivity, as an example, I think there's still some way to go on that front in terms of really kind of driving the adoption of technologies that will really then help us scale to these 34 billion connections, and also make sure we do so in a way that's beneficial for the enterprises or MNOs or MVNOs who are adopting the technology. And so just quickly on who G&D are. I mean, basically a long history in security and defined really as a security tech company. With over 100 years in the market, developing security from banknotes to credit cards, and obviously then, inventing the eSIM and the SIM card itself over the past few decades. In terms of numbers, currently manage over 1 billion devices worldwide, have already kind of performed over 200 million eSIM downloads, and we're the first provider of iSIM globally as well. So all of these kind of different technologies that really help seamlessly enable deployments of IoT devices, now also combined with one of the leading cellular and satellite connectivity offerings globally as well. And really, obviously, the key is to be able to manage all of that via a single pane of glass, which is where, obviously, G&D with that stack ownership really excels. So really excited to discuss this in more detail as we go through the session today. And I will now pass back to Robin, but thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Sam. Very good stuff. We'll now move on to Ronald Westrate, SVP and CTO at Core, for your take on it. Ronald, over to you.
Hey, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Ronald Westrate. I work for Core Wireless, and we are an IoT connectivity hyperscaler. And in that sense, we help our customers to manage their global deployments, and with that come specific challenges. I'll just take the top 3, and I think you heard a few things already. First of all, you need to have a single SKU. You want to simplify your logistics, right? Have a single SIM for the global, for the globe. Have a single pane of glass to manage it all, API or UI. And secondly, you want to have as well resiliency, right? If you deploy to a certain country, you don't want to have blind spots. So you want to have multiple networks in almost every country, of course. And thirdly, future-proofing, and that's the eSIM component where you have to deal with certain regulatory restrictions when you go, for example, to China, where you cannot do permanent roaming. So we help our customers to do that in a seamless manner. And I'll keep it short. It's just an intro, right? We go into the details, hopefully a little bit more in the coming, half an hour. I'm flipping this slide because it's for us, an honor to be again in the leaders quadrant over there as the only non-MNO. And it doesn't mean that we are per se competing with these MNOs. We're actually working together and we use all their strong points in our own connectivity products. Robin?
Great, thank you very much, Ronald. That's terrific. We'd now like to start the session, so if we can have everybody online, that's lovely. Okay, great. Well, so you've heard there from 3 leading connectivity service providers who are providing connectivity services for IoT worldwide. Each has a somewhat different perspective, I suspect, and we'll get to those during the discussions. I hope there will be some controversy, but let's see. So I think well, I'm going to start with a first question for Sam, which is what are the main challenges, Sam, faced when designing IoT deployments for global use? That's a sort of good starting pitch, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. I think there's many, which so I probably won't cover them all, and hopefully others will chip in with some of that. But I mean, I'm speaking, I guess, from a connectivity enablement perspective, so be it the network or the eSIM kind of perspective, I suppose. But I mean, I think from a network side, I mean, some of the challenges really are around the technology availability and really the transparency of that. I think if we look at some of the kind of technologies like LPWAN, for example, CAT-M, NB-IoT, there is inconsistent availability of that, and that can create some headaches when deploying globally, and that they're not available in every country. But it's not always clear to, say, a customer in the US that not every country is the same as them in terms of the maturity of the deployment. We also then have some challenges in terms of the eSIM technology availability. If we look at the standards around SGP32, which is the new IoT standard, which will make life a lot easier when deploying globally and localizing connections. We're seeing delays there, which is obviously then holding things up. And also then in terms of the implementation there and how that's done on the device level or on the SIM level. More and more now also cost is becoming, or clarity around cost is becoming a challenge, particularly on the roaming side, which is where this combination of kind of local connectivity and roaming connectivity is really going to be essential. We're seeing access fees, we're seeing kind of general roaming uncertainty to some extent, and then also a lot of regulatory changes in terms of permanent roaming or their ability to kind of how you have to deploy certain profiles within certain countries, also kind of adding cost or creating difficulties when truly planning a global deployment. I think reliability, redundancy, and uptime, is something that you really have to consider. Does it need to be built in? Do we need it to leverage other technologies such as satellite in order to complement, traditional terrestrial networks? And also kind of the application requirements in terms of the device, latency or the bandwidth requirements, or even the data sovereignty requirements. All of these things combined, and this is just really looking at the connectivity piece itself, create a lot of questions for an enterprise who isn't necessarily an IoT kind of connectivity expert. And that's really where I think finding the right partner who has this expertise and the ability to kind of help guide as a consultant the enterprise through to making a decision is really important.
Yeah, so it's really it's becoming more complex as more considerations need to be taken into account. So Ronald, I don't know if you can add to that.
Well, I mean, I sort of picked up on the eSIM standards, right? And you mentioned 02 and 32, and it's actually fantastic that they are there. And we know there's disadvantages with 02, the need for SMS, and certain devices don't always support it. So 32 is almost out there and is sort of highly anticipated. Hopefully early next year. So that's one big thing. And yeah, I mean, and hopefully we'll dive a little bit more in eSIM. I mean, especially globally and roaming, the regulatory restrictions become more and more apparent, right? And COVID also showed that, no more traveling, and suddenly you saw the roaming traffic, being the bigger one, not obscured anymore by consumer traffic, and therefore you saw these networks, hey, what is this stuff, right? And imposing restrictions, additional fees, and so on. So the world is changing when it comes to roaming, and I think you'll see a lot more of local connectivity moving forward using eSIM.
That's great. Yeah. So Luigi, you wanted to add some things, I think.
Yeah, I think this is a good point from both Sam and Ronald, and we've seen these not just because of access fees, but as Sam said, there are more and more countries that restrict roaming, meaning you can come in, stay for 90 days, then you either go out with your device or you need a local profile. So it's not really a market trend, but it's mandated by regulations. And therefore, I think every one of us, eSIM or not, will eventually have to adapt to the market, to the roaming situation.
Yes. So a lot of challenges.
Very important to design a solution.
Okay. So a lot of challenges coming up. And then one for you, Luigi. What does global connectivity versus regional connectivity mean, and what are the key differences? So getting a little bit more into the detail now.
Right. So starting from what we just said, global connectivity usually means that you're using the roaming agreements of an MNO, an IMSI that you have selected, or a SIM card that you're buying that is linked to that IMSI, and you're accessing operators around the world using that specific IMSI, which means you're therefore using the agreements to access that specific network on the ground of the operator that provides you with the agreements itself. This means that you are relying on the fact that that specific operator has stable agreements from both pricing and availability of the networks, and also regulatory issues, meaning that today the roaming is available in that country, you hope it's going to be available down the road many years. Regional or local connectivity means that actually you are either via selecting different IMSIs on the same SIM card, or via using eSIM SGP32, meaning switching SIM profiles, eSIM profiles on the same support. You are selecting the local operator, meaning instead of relying on accessing a certain network via roaming, you are directly accessing that network because you're selecting that specific IMSI. And of course, that doesn't just mean compliance with regulations, probably better pricing, but it also means very often better performances, because you don't have to bounce back to where your IMSI is hosted, let's say in the Netherlands, and you're accessing the US network. So you need to bounce back to the Netherlands and then go back to where your application server is eventually, your endpoint, which may be in the US itself. So you need to go across the ocean twice. You may well stay locally. Right. So that you stay within the US. Latency is much better. Data staying locally. So it's not just a pricing thing, a regulatory thing, but many applications today are very, let's say, sensitive to performance. Think about payment systems. Now, payment transaction time is very important for them. It's the main KPI. And part of the transaction time is the speed of connectivity. So the latency of connectivity.
Right. Yeah. Excellent. So would Sam or Ronald want to say anything about that?
I think for me, Luigi kind of spoke to a lot of the challenges, but I think, one of the things is that for an enterprise, the management of that needs to kind of be zero touch, right? There needs to be the challenge is essentially that it's not particularly zero touch today in terms of, if they're deploying to say one device to France, one device to the US, one device to the Middle East, then, the kind of programming of, the right POPs to speak to or the right profiles to be using, needs to happen by itself, if that makes sense. So, via rules or automation in the platform and kind of planning the deployment by the customer, but not having to manage the deployment once it's already been sent out. And I think that's where probably we need a little more advancement, but certainly I think, the localization piece, really is important moving forward and needs to be addressed.
Yeah, maybe I want to add something here, right? I mean, we talk about, global connectivity through roaming, where essentially you have a core network and IMSIs, and then you would be roaming across the globe. And normally you would pull all the traffic back to your core network, and you have very high latency, right? And that doesn't go well for certain use cases. The other end of the spectrum is you go towards a local SIM profile that you download using eSIM. It's fantastic. You got lowest latency and all of that. There's something in the middle, right? You would still use your global connectivity profile or SIM and all of that, but you have local breakouts, right? And you wouldn't do that in every country, right? That's a bit exaggerated, but you would do a regional breakout, if you know what I mean, right? Let's call it continental if you want. But you don't have to do eSIM to download something local, you keep your global connectivity roaming profile, but you make sure that the data itself stays reasonably local and have reasonably low enough latency. So that's like a middle ground solution that works quite well as well in certain cases. Just wanted to add that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's really great. So that kind of indicates that having started with the main challenges from a global perspective, we now have challenges from a global versus regional perspective as well. So it's sort of areas of increasing complexity, I think, to ensure seamless connectivity. So as Luigi was saying earlier, it's not just a question of picking up connectivity at the end of having done everything else. It's not a sort of consumer disposable that you can pick up at the end. It's really got to be planned into the environment right from the get-go, and that's going to become increasingly important with the diversity of different sorts of applications worldwide, with the diversity of connectivity requirements that those have worldwide, and it's only going to get more and more complex. But of course, Sam's point that it really needs to be simple from the customer's point of view. So a one-touch environment is highly desirable. Let's move on now to a specific area, which is eSIM, and I see that we have a question on that, but we'll come to that in a minute. So, Ronald, what do you see as the main benefits of eSIM for global IoT deployments?
Well, first of all, eSIM is a standard, right? It's a GSMA standard, and there are various flavors of it. So we'll not go into that. You heard O2 and 32 already, right? But it's still just a tool, right? We use it, but we've also built intelligence on top of it, because it's all about that seamless, connectivity experience that we want to offer. Couple of examples where we use eSIM is, for example, dealing with regulatory restrictions. You go to China and we see that the SIM has arrived there, and we then automatically switch you to a China mobile profile to ensure you remain regulatory compliant. Or you move to Brazil and you can do 30 days max roaming. So before the 30-day mark, we move you on to a Brazil profile and ensure you are regulatory compliant. And it's just not only about regulatory compliance. You hear that a lot. It's also things like cost and latency. For example, you heard before from Luigi. Now, here's an example where you have a truck doing pretty high bandwidth for some reason, driving through the US, and we would use a local AT&T profile or Verizon. Doesn't matter for the example. But now you cross the border to Canada, or through and you will be roaming, and you don't want that. We noticed, and then we will move you on to a Telus profile while in Canada, and moving back, we'll move you back to AT&T. So we want to make that seamless, right? It's not just a customer having to click buttons or using an API every time it happens. We do that seamlessly. So we use eSIM for those type of things, and hopefully later on we'll touch a little bit about technology sunsets where eSIM can also be relevant, right?
Okay. Would Sam or Luigi want to say anything about that?
I totally agree with Ronald. There are many use cases that require adding intelligence on top of the eSIM. At floLIVE, for example, we've been doing the intelligence before the eSIM came out. So as I said, when I introduced floLIVE, we've been working with 15 IMSIs among global and local solutions for quite a few years now, exactly for this reason, because the experience for the end customer, for the users, need to be automated. They shouldn't be worried. They shouldn't be bothered with, oh, how is the SIM going to behave? What do I have to think about when the SIM lands here or lands there? So this is paramount, having solutions that allow global connectivity by using the best combinations of roaming, local breakouts, and local solutions. And that's where I think we should all be focusing to make sure that end users have a seamless experience. That's at least what we experience in our few years, let's say about 10 years of doing that. That's very important for end users eventually.
Okay. Sam, we've got a question from the audience. Will SGP32 adoption require device hardware changes versus current SIM technology? If so, are there steps to future-proof that could be taken? Can you respond to that?
Yeah, there's a couple of approaches in SGP32, right? The initially standardized way required something called the IPA, which is the IoT provisioning agent, which is essentially a piece of firmware or code that would sit, on the device itself in order to help with the provisioning of the profile. So, that would need to be at a device level if you were to go down the IPA-D, they call it, route, which is the device-based route. And there's some benefits to that. And to be honest, if you have the option to deploy that versus the alternative, which I'll speak to in a second, you probably should go down that route. But, to be honest, it is code, and therefore not all devices are built the same, and therefore not all devices are able to support that code within their application processor or wherever else, because simply they're lightweight IoT devices, and they're built not to support that kind of thing. So there's now a kind of phase 2, I suppose, which is called the IPA-E, which is essentially a SIM-based version of the IPA-D that allows for that process or the downloading process to be managed via the SIM instead of the device, which will then enable this across the board on any type of device that basically can take a SIM. As I say, there's some pros and cons in terms of the download speed of IPA-D versus IPA-E is going to be significantly faster probably, and therefore use less power. So when you're looking at a lightweight IoT device, potentially IPA-E, which is the only thing it supports, could be less beneficial than supporting an IPA-D, which isn't possible. But what it is it's better than having nothing at all. And so I think SGP32, it's not. There's two approaches, both are extremely valid, and I think obviously the goal is for the market to support both. And I think really it's hopefully at some point we'll see the module makers be deploying the IPA in the modules themselves. And that's really in an ideal world where it'll end up, because then it's just available as standard to anyone who takes a module off the shelf from any of the main vendors in the world. But, we're not seeing that adoption yet, I would say, from an IPA-D perspective. I think, obviously everyone's waiting a little bit till the standards are ready. And so therefore that has to be then built into the development cycle. So we're a few years away from that. So in the interim, we've got these two options where if you're an OEM, you can write the source code into your hardware, or you can use the IPA-E option as well.
So Ronald, would you have anything to add to this question? Will SGP32 adoption require device hardware changes versus current SIM technology? The changing things in the field is really, I guess, what this is all about.
Yeah. I mean, the two things that come to mind, and on 32 specifically, not having the need for SMS anymore is a big one, right? We see that being an issue most of the times. Another important aspect, and it might not be solely it's not potentially related to 32 alone, right? We see a lot where, a lot of low power devices where using eSIM and you want to download something else. Well, the device is offline, right? I mean, there's no power to it. So, it doesn't work because you might want to switch your profile, but it's just not attached. So the combination of being very smart with a low power device, understanding when it is connected to a network, and manage the way you do your profile downloads, for example, is very important. It might not be an answer specifically to 32, but eSIM is not a magic wand and it fixes everything. It really needs as well that intelligence to be able to deal with low power devices specifically.
Yeah. Okay. Something to add to that, Luigi, or should we move on?
Totally agree.
Okay.
Yes,
okay. Okay. In that case, I'm going to move on to Sam then for the next question. So, Sam, how important are unified management platforms in ensuring seamless global IoT connectivity?
Yeah, I think, per many of the comments that we've all made so far, I think, the smarts in the platform are super important in terms of scaling IoT projects, really, and optimizing, the value extraction that you can achieve. And really kind of, I think, having some sort of central platform where you have your connectivity management, your eSIM management, be it eSIM management for 02, 22, 32, upcoming 42, iSIM, all these things, is really going to help essentially, track your costs, which is a very important thing, optimize performance of your applications. You can see what's performing well in different regions in the same place, make comparisons, and really then adopting kind of like new technology as well. Is a lot more seamless if it's all in the same platform. I mean, the last thing that I think an enterprise wants to be doing is managing, 10 different carrier platforms and 10 different carrier contracts, for example. I think it's a lot of work and not something I'd wish on many people, to be honest. And then I think, and from that perspective, I just think if we're looking at scale, and particularly given these regulatory requirements and the need for localization, really centralizing your kind of supply and management via a strong global partner is really kind of one of the only ways in which we can really scale IoT deployments. Because otherwise, unless you have a significantly big team that's dedicated to managing all of these different elements that aren't really related to your core business, then it slows you down and increases cost. And so I think, it's pretty important.
Okay. Anything to add to that, Luigi, about unified management platforms ensuring seamless global IoT connectivity?
Yeah, I think, as Sam said, it's important that companies, when this goes back to the title of this webinar, when someone starts to design a solution, because they have an opportunity to deploy IoT devices, I think that sometimes end users need to understand that they need to focus on their core business. Their core business is getting the device right, getting the solution right, and relying on the right partner, as Sam said, a global partner, an experienced partner that has been spending time, money, resources in making sure that the solution they provide you are right for a global deployment. We've seen in the past end users that, in a way, prefer to do it on their own. And as Sam said, you either have a very large team to handle 3, 4, 5 carriers at the same time, or it ends up being very painful down the road, especially if the solution is a good fit and works well and you sell lots of them, then it ends up being very painful. So my only suggestion is really, the successful IoT stories are very often the ones in which the end user, the enterprise, has been focusing on making sure that the solution, the IoT solution, is working well and the business case is there, and relying on a good partner to deploy connectivity.
Oh, that's great. Okay. So would you want to add anything to that, Ronald, at this stage?
Yeah, I mean, it's so logical, right? My daughter of 10 also nods when I say this, right? You need to have a single management platform. Imagine you're doing washing machines, they need to be connected and you ship them all over the world. It's just not doable. It doesn't scale if you need to deal with, various piles of SIMs and different platforms to manage them all. It just doesn't work, right? So I don't know if I have anything to add. It's just so logical, right, that you have a single pane of glass, right?
Oh, it's fine. Okay. All right. So back to you, Luigi. So really taking forward what you were talking about earlier about connectivity, global connectivity and regional connectivity, how can you ensure data localization regulations across different regions? How do you get to grips with that?
Right. So first of all, it takes some analysis. It takes continuous studying of the situation. So you need to have a dedicated department within the operator to take care of that, as it keeps changing, and it will keep changing in the future. But I think what, at least at floLIVE, what we found as the tool to take care of that is, first of all, owning our infrastructure. If you own your infrastructure and you can then negotiate with your partners, any MNO that donates you an IMSI, basically, let's call it IMSI donor. So you can negotiate with them to get their IMSI and you host it on your core network. Then you can make that core network work in a way that is compliant, it's reliable, and it also delivers the right performance. For example, you can have an IMSI that serves you as a global bootstrap and on which you can rely upon to deploy and connect for the first time. And then in our case, for example, we developed over the years our own multi-IMSI applet that allows to manage up to 10 IMSIs at the same time, loaded already on the SIM card, which means that after the bootstrap, in a hierarchy with a certain logic that you can apply to the applet, you can drive the applet to say, look, for when you see that you are registering to a Brazilian network, just switch to this IMSI and use the local IMSI, which is fully compliant. When you see that you're registering in China, switch to this other IMSI and use the local IMSI. If you are in Ecuador instead, there's no need to use a local IMSI. So use the Latin America IMSI. And we have Telefónica Colombia, for example. Use Telefónica Colombia because it delivers very good coverage at a very good price in that location. So it's a continuous effort. It takes quite a lot of resources, but I think the key is having a lot of partners, having good relationships with them, being always up to date, and owning your own technology, because in this way you can steer whenever necessary in these times of evolution, let's say, in the market, of changes in the market.
Oh, that's great, Sam. You would agree with that, I'm sure. But from your perspective, I mean, G&D has a somewhat different perspective, being a supplier of IMSIs, IMSIs, but SIM cards as well.
Yeah, but I think, obviously, I think the perspective around the question of kind of, how do you kind of ensure data localization, I suppose, is more or less aligned. I think one of the key things is not to over-engineer your network and your deployment, right? You could localize in every country if you wanted to, but you might be adding cost, or even on a regional basis. Really it is somewhat application dependent. If an application doesn't need 50 millisecond latency, don't deploy the network to give you 50 millisecond latency if it's adding cost, because a lot of IoT connectivity, really, in terms of the return on the investment from an application perspective, is cost related, right? So I think it's just finding the balance, and like Luigi said, really, and I think Ronald said as well, it's just about kind of designing the right solution for the right application, and really looking at everything independently, because if you don't, you could end up with a solution that costs you an absolute fortune and it's overkill, and therefore and then you might fail from an application perspective. So, I think it's just finding the balance.
Okay, we have time for just one more question, which I'm going to give to Ronald, please. It's IoT Safe, and what part do you see IoT Safe playing in IoT security when deploying IoT devices worldwide? So we haven't talked about security yet, so I think that's quite a useful further thing to cover.
Well, this is the more tech geeky stuff, right? So I find it an excellent let's say standard, right? IoT Safe essentially allows the SIM card to be finally used, not just for authenticating to a core network, but as a general root of trust. On these iPhones, for example, you have things like Secure Enclave, but for IoT devices that need to be more cheap, you don't have room / you don't want to have the cost for a separate discrete hardware element to deal with chip to cloud security. Now, IoT Safe actually deals with those things, right? So it's fantastic to have a higher level of security using the SIM as a root of trust, and on the back of it as well comes a thing called zero touch provisioning, which is fantastic, right? And this is something that is relevant for massive deployments, where if you would deploy a device in the field and you need to configure it, you have an engineer that costs money, that you need to put in credentials and so on. With zero touch provisioning that you could do using IoT Safe, you have a piece of software on the device called a cloud connector, and it will use the credentials on the SIM through IoT Safe to just in time configure to the right endpoint that in AWS, for example, and just by itself, right? You can throw it unconfigured into the field and it will configure itself. So IoT Safe essentially for me does two things: a higher level of security, chip to cloud, and it also enables massive IoT deployments through zero touch provisioning. It's a great thing.
Sam, would you have anything to add to that briefly? We don't have much time, but if you've got a sound bite to think of.
I do have an opinion on IoT Safe, and I do think IoT Safe is great, but I think it's kind of does half a job, really. It kind of goes half the way to really doing what IoT needs or IoT devices that have been deployed globally needs. And I think the connecting the endpoint in the cloud, to me, isn't zero touch provisioning. To me, that's just kind of provisioning a cloud, an endpoint. But you still then have to provision maybe in the device beforehand the APN and port numbers and some of these other things that essentially I think are equally as important. And so for me, what we've looked at doing is taking the IoT Safe concept and then building kind of like IoT Safe 2, or a true zero touch provisioning piece that does what IoT Safe does in terms of that secure connection to the cloud, but at the same time allows you to set the actual configuration of the device, be it APN or other kind of device config criteria, that then come back down the TLS channel to the device and then program it over the SIM. So, I think IoT Safe does one job, but I think, taking it to the next level really then solves kind of mass IoT deployment provisioning in the field, because you never know where these things are going or what service they may use and APNs, etc. So I do think it does a great job, but I think it could do more.
Okay, well that opens up a whole other sort of range of discussions. Luigi, I don't know if you have a final point to make on that before we close the panel or not.
I think you will take, as you said, a whole different webinar to discuss that. So I'll leave it to the next webinar.
No, that's great. Okay, all right. Well, thank you, the three of you, for a very interesting session. Unfortunately, it was rather short, but we hopefully will have another session sometime soon. So thank you all for your contributions, and also thank you in the audience for your questions. There was a question that I didn't get a chance to get to, I'm afraid, but I think if you we will see that in the afterwards, and the panelists can get back to you on that in due course. So thanks very much. We're now moving on to a spotlight session with Jörg Wolf, who is at AI Digital. And Jörg is going to talk to us about global, secure, and reliable IoT connectivity. But a brief introduction to Jörg. He's a senior digital business consultant at A1 Digital with a strong foundation in electrical engineering. He specializes in managed connectivity, IoT platforms, and cloud solutions. He's dedicated to helping clients navigate the complexities of digital transformation. So a lot of current topics around at the moment. So over to you, Jörg, for your short presentation. Thanks very much. Oh, we can't hear you. I think you're on mute. You may.
No. So thank you.
There
thank you, Robin.
Go. We've got you now. Okay.
Excellent.
All right,
excellent. So thank you, Robin, for the introduction, and welcome everyone to this session. And I will talk about global, secure, and reliable IoT connectivity we offer at A1 Digital. So who is A1 Digital? A1 Digital belongs to the A1 Telekom Austria group. So we are A1 Digital International. We have a German subsidiary, and we have Exascale as our cloud provider. To the A1 Telekom Austria group also belong our network companies, A1 in Austria and mostly on the Balkan countries. And the A1 Telekom Austria group is mostly owned by América Móvil from Mexico. And they own a lot of other telco companies like Claro, Telmex, and Telcel, where we are from. A1 Digital was founded in 2017. In our portfolio, we have IoT solutions. We do advanced analytics. We have an own cloud service called Exascale. We operate in the field of security and network as a service. We have more than 1,500 customers and many more projects. We have more than 200 employees, and these are in our offices in Munich, Vienna, and Lausanne. And we also operate our own 7 data centers in 4 European countries, so these are in Europe only. So what are our building blocks? Safe, secure, smart. So in the Internet of Things, we combine hardware, software, and connectivity to solutions. We have the cloud services, agility and data sovereignty within a secure European cloud. We provide network as a service, so connecting and maintaining of whole infrastructures via our cloud-based networks, and cybersecurity. So we consult our clients in how to securing their infrastructure and their assets. Coming to connectivity. So we span a strong network over the whole world. We have connectivity partners in more than 180 countries. I will dive a bit deeper into that here, where we show what A1 Digital managed connectivity makes. So as I said, we have 180 plus countries, and there we have more than 400 roaming partners. So in every country, more than one network mostly. So this means we offer national roaming also. We provide robust SIM cards and eSIM profiles for our customers that withstand extreme conditions. Let's drink something. And our platform allows us to do SIM lifecycle management, which is very important, like test, sleep, life status. And you can choose from, give me a second, please. I'm speaking too fast. You can choose from 2G, 3G, and 4G networks, also like we talked before, NB-IoT, LTE-M, 5G voice, and give me a second, I'm too fast. Take some breath. Sorry. Yeah, we also offer voice, and many of customers use the SMS. We offer custom plans for our customers from data, voice, and pay-per-use bundles, and offer centralized control. So, sorry to be honest, I'm a bit nervous today, and it's very hot in Vienna today. So take some breath. Centralized control on a single platform, no matter where you are in the world, to control the SIM cards. And we have strong support 24/7 in German and English. And the platform offers also smart alarms, so you can control cost and activities of your platforms to help to manage your budget and your project efficiency. And speaking about security, our managed connectivity with Exascale Cloud offers an end-to-end protection from the hardware using our network. So we offer private APNs and VPN connection. So we can terminate the whole traffic in Exascale, which is our own cloud, or in your application, wherever you are. It's no problem. So VPN, so you have the whole traffic isolated from the internet, and our own managed IoT platform also runs on Exascale, of course. Yeah, speaking about references, here we have Tractive. Tractive provides trackers for pets, for dogs, for cats, whatever. And they choose us because we have a very strong roaming network. They operate in more than 90 countries. They needed durable SIM cards, so they use the chip SIMs that they solder into their devices because they're used outdoors. They have to be very robust. And for them, it's very important to do fault analysis on the managed connectivity platform and also the lifecycle management. When you buy such a tracker, it contains a certain time of connectivity, so you can use it with the base price you paid, and after a certain period, you can prolong that, and all of that is managed on our managed connectivity platform. And yes, here we come to the end. Back to you, Robin. So, and if there, thank you very much for your audience. And if you have more questions, just contact us at a1.digital. Thank you very much.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. So yes, I can understand the issues of heat. So don't worry about that.
The air condition failed in the hotel. So
not a problem. Okay. I would like to ask you just a couple of questions, actually, related to your slides, just to sort of lengthen the sort of develop the story a bit. So beyond managed connectivity, do you provide further IoT building blocks?
Yes, so we offer the whole portfolio from hardware. Like we have a big portfolio of trackers. We have gateways that we can offer to our customers, and of course we have an IoT platform. So we have some turnkey ready solutions, for example, in the asset management or for the railway industry, for machining industries, whatever that help our customers to have a very short go-to-market period, and that makes us a complete end-to-end provider here.
No, that's great. So a really good question here is when a company has an IoT project, when is the right moment to contact you? Right at the beginning? I mean, when they're talking about connectivity,
Yeah.
should they leave it until they get to a later stage, or should they be
No.
contacting you straight away? And if so, why?
As early as possible, because the engineers they tend to just consult the data sheets, and then they see CAT-M, for example, is a very good technology to provide connectivity to the devices, even if the device is operated in under the ground in a garage or whatever. And then they designed a complete product, and we had that example. Then they were asking, okay, we have that and want to operate all over Europe. And we said, okay, what's your fallback network here? And they said, oh, what fallback network? And I said, yeah, there are white spots on the map in Europe, so we don't have CAT-M everywhere. And even if it is available, not every operator has roaming agreements for that technology in every country. So this is the earlier the better. So we have more than 7 years of experience. Just ask us. We are happy to help you.
No, so as you say, it's not as simple as you might think. There's sort of connectivity, as you say, white spots, and you've got a plan for those as well as part of the overall connectivity requirement. So that's really great. So just a final question then: what makes A1 Digital special when compared to other telcos? Why are you different to other telcos?
Yes, I think it's our more than 7 years of experience in the field. So we do IoT projects ourselves. We have the platform, so we have seen a lot of examples in the field, and we can help mostly every customer out there to help him with his problems to connecting. And our consultants are happy to help. So we have an open ear to our customers, and we do the consulting. We help and we find the best solution, and make everything, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, tailor-made offers. So when you ask for a connectivity in Europe, and it has to be very low price, so we can make special plans and take out providers that are extremely expensive. For example, when you take out Monaco because your agricultural machines won't be used in Monaco, then you can reduce the price on a rate plan. So, and that's a lot of knowledge we have, and we are happy to help the customers.
That's great. Okay. Well, thanks very much. I think that draws this session to a close. So I'd like to thank, obviously, Jörg for providing us with that summary of A1 Digital. Also back to the panelists that we had a good discussion with. And also you, the audience, for sticking with us during this hour. So thank you and goodbye.